And now, without further ado, I have the distinguished honor and privilege of presenting to you the Queen of Color, the Mother of Artists, globally acclaimed, award-winning master acrylic artist, and the star of our show, Ginger Cook, as she once again mesmerizes her audience with the daring do's and don'ts of painting with acrylics.
Hi everybody, John, I guess we're on, huh?
Well, we're on, but we can't see you yet. Now we can see you.
Okay.
You disappeared just for a moment.
All right, I want to welcome everybody to our Tuesday show. Just say hi, this is Ginger Cook, and the other voice is John Little. And, you know, as acrylic artists, one of the things you'll notice about our channel is that we refer often back to the masters. We've had another show, about what we can learn from the masters, and people have asked us to repeat that because there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. The things that we know about art, people knew 300 years ago, 400 years ago. Some of the principles that we're employing in our own art today have been known for centuries, and people went to art school and they spent years there and they apprenticed under other masters. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to take advantage of their knowledge, and I'm going to just go over one of my favorite artists. He lived 100 years before Vincent van Gogh, and say Monet, Renoir, those guys. He was 100 years before, but they all knew who he was because he was considered the master of still life, and also he was a tremendous portrait artist. And back, the time that Vincent van Gogh was and Monet and those guys were painting, the camera was out. The camera pretty much was, the photography was pretty much running, at least black and white photography and so forth, by 1865. So in the late 1800s when Van Gogh was painting and Monet and those guys, they could actually take photographs of some of their work if they wanted to and paint from photographs. But Chardin, there was no camera. In fact, the artists at those times, they were the camera for people, And so the art tended to be a little bit more realistic. Still was arty, but then there's all these things. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to just talk about his artwork and how you can learn about it, where you can learn to get some lessons about it and so forth. So if I want to just thank our moderators, Wendy and Kim Sung, and who else is on here? Tanya, and Tanya, you make the greatest comments. Thank you so much. And so thank you for joining us. Just a sense, if you're one of our new viewers and you've never watched this before, normally we do a painting class twice a week. Normally you just see me painting. Last night, do I have a picture of what we painted last night? I don't remember what we did. What did we do?
What did we do? It was good though, whatever it was.
We enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. This all blurs together. What did we do last night? All right. So last night we discovered another master. I'm going to hold up the picture right here.
No, you can put it down.
I can put it down. All right. This was a Monet, and so we painted this Monet painting in 9x12, and we talked a little bit about that. But tonight we're talking about Chardin. Now, isn't he absolutely adorable? I'm going to read you a little bit about him.
I'm going to bring up the other picture I have of him too.
And can I have Sammy's? Can Sammy have my glasses?
Chester has them right now.
Chester has them, some glasses, my spare glasses. He was born in 1699. That's how old. That's a long time. You can find out a lot about it, a lot about him on, say, Wikipedia. But I can just tell you that Jean-Baptiste-Simeon Chardin was French, Chardin. He died in 1779. So
that's a pretty good life.
He lived a long time, almost 100 years, not quite, but but he lived into his 90s, which in those days was a big deal. And he painted everyday life in France, and then a lot of what he painted helps us understand today what he painted. He was the son of a cabinet maker and so forth, but he rose to prominence in the art community because he was so good at what he did. He just didn't fall out of the box, though, and learn that. He went to art school and did all that stuff. So if you'll first paint, the first picture I'm going to show you is a portrait of him. And what is artists, what can we learn about a painting like this? Well, for instance, please notice all the soft blues and so forth that are on this side of the picture. Can you guys see that? See all the soft blues? And then you'll see that this dark area here is in the background. So it's not just a dark background. All right, a lot of times people just did dark backgrounds. And he's got this awesome little sort of funny little hat on. Probably he was bald, kept his head warm. In those days there was no central air and heat, you know, things were still cold. And I love these funny little glasses. You'll notice that his scarf on this side of his face. Now you see where the light's coming from. He's got a light source, and this is what we're going to talk about how to determine a light source in your paintings. Now I want you to see the light that's coming. It's coming from this direction, and so this side of his face is lighter than this side. You'll see the nose here. You'll see this part of the scarf is light. As it comes under his chin, it starts to get darker and pretty much fades into obscurity. Though there's this sort of, and remember, there's a rule in art, we talk about this all the time in our artwork, you know, in any kind of class we do, your eye will go immediately to the lightest light and the darkest dark. And if you don't think so, wear a white blouse somewhere and get a little tiny dark spot on it, and the first thing everybody's going to see is, hey, you have a spot on your blouse. You know what I'm saying? That's what they do, don't they? So that's one of the things we're going to talk about, his light source. You notice the shading coming over here. This side of his little knot up here is shaded. When you're trying to understand where something should be shaded, don't make it up. Understand your light source. Have some reference photos, and then be well aware. It isn't good enough to take a picture just in flat light and try to paint something, because in order for something on a flat surface like this to look three-dimensional, it's important to have to have a light source. Just if this were a ball, you know, for instance, we've seen some videos on YouTube. I've got one on how to shade, and it's just a round ball. But if this was a ball, see how it's lighter here and gets darker over there if the light's coming from this direction. So anyway, I think he looks like a real cutie. And let me just go through another picture. Do we have any questions why I'm going for this?
The question is his hat wear.
Well, we think his hats are very interesting. I think it's this little sort of bandana. I love the blue bow, don't you?
So we're trying to understand, why does he have a bow on?
You know, I don't know. We don't know why he wears.
Well, my guess is he needs something to help hold that on, and, you know, what else are you going to use? You have to think of the time period.
Yeah, 1700s.
They certainly didn't have Velcro.
No, and you know, so it's obviously was something he tied on, or maybe he had long hair and he didn't want it to get in his paint.
Yeah, we have no idea what he.
His hairline's way up here, and I see no sign of it. Though obviously he shaved. See that?
Yeah.
And look at this little bit of pink. Can you see this tiny little bit of peach in his cheeks right here? I mean, this is so well done, so beautifully well done, right? So, you know, which I think is absolutely cool. Now, some of the pictures you're looking at here are paintings done by Chardin. This was a one that released on our gingercooklive.gallery membership. This was a tutorial. We have about 3 paintings on our own website of his. We'll talk about those in a minute. This is a new one that's going to be released soon. This is really a 1.5 to 2 cookie lesson, and these are 3 cookie. In other words, a little bit more challenging. All right. We talk about those, but I want to just go through some of his artwork, you guys, and talk about this. The first thing I'm going to grab is this one. Now, this is a sketch that he did. Now, one of the things that artists used to do, some artists still do it, but it was very common then, was that they would do sketches of things before they ever painted anything, and they would determine the light source. Now, you look at the white chalk. Can you tell from looking at this the direction of the light? It's kind of coming. Well, let's see. It's light here. It's coming, well, here. I guess it's coming from this direction still. It's catching kind of almost this way, isn't it? He's got the light coming almost this direction, because you've got a little light on his face, on the back of his hand here, and in a few places. But he's not putting it. Those are going to be the lightest spots on his painting. All right.
It really looks like it's come from the photographer's or the artist's left shoulder. Over his left shoulder, shooting at it.
Yeah, this way.
Yeah.
Now, you know, they didn't have spotlights or anything, so the reason that people always say, oh, I have this art studio, I need a north light. Well, the reason they did was because you couldn't have the sun changing the light in your studio. So what would happen with a north light the sun never came near the north light window, It just was constant light in your studio if you had a studio with north light. So in any event, this is how he arranged the light for this picture, okay? Now, I'm going to show you this one, and I'm going to show you this one now. He showed a lot of people, doing ordinary things, particularly women at tasks. And then here's some lady in a tub doing laundry. Now, what's cute to me is her son's blowing bubbles. Look, think how long ago this was, 1700s, and he's born in 1699. This kid's got a little stick and blowing soap bubbles. And children today still like to do that. I think one of the things that's fun. Now, again, look at the light source and look at the light arrangement in this picture. There is somebody back here, all right? And I'm going to show you the color photo too, because just real quick. A couple of things to understand. This was so long ago, some of the colors may have faded. So this may not be exactly what it looked like when he painted it, because oil paint is not that stable. And we don't know the conditions it was kept in, but generally speaking, the lights and the darks have stayed the same. So overall, this is what we would call a warm picture, okay? So sometimes when you're painting something, this is what we're talking about, learning from the masters. When you're painting something, you want to decide, is this a warm or a cool picture? Warm colors are things like the sun, reddish browns, oranges, yellows. Cools would be in your blues, your purples, okay? So generally, what you can do is you can decide a painting is either warm or cool. There's a lot to think about when you're designing. And in this case, it's warm, but now notice the blue outfit on this young man. This is, John zoomed in on this. There's a little kind of blue-green outfit. Blue is opposite orange on the color wheel, the sort of teal blue color. That's this one right here, turquoise blue, is opposite orange on the color wheel. Those are complementary colors. And what that means is, and so she's got a little tiny, less bright, but a little bit of a blue sash and a tiny bit of a green skirt. You see a red chair here. Green and red are opposite each other on the color wheel, so there's a complementary color going on here. We've got a triangular picture pattern. There's so much you can learn about this, a picture pattern. In other words, your eye comes in the picture here, all right? And what keeps it from leaving is you've got this door here which acts as a stop. So your eye comes in here as a viewer, and of course the cat. Oh, don't you love this cat down here just sort of sitting there? They still do that. Isn't that funny? Cats haven't changed.
They have not changed in years.
No. And here's this little wash bucket with a broom in it, a tub, and it looks to me like that's a ladder, part of a ladder going upstairs somewhere, probably to a loft. So this door is partially open. So we see somebody else doing some laundry, but
Looks
this
like
door...
she's hanging up the clothes.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Maybe hanging up the clothes. Maybe that's outside hanging up the clothes. I can't really tell, right? Well, in any event, the main deal is here. This is your picture pattern like this. It's a triangular picture pattern. This is one of the easiest picture patterns to make. And in other words, so this keeps your eye focused in, and you've got some very white, here's white. Now look, here's high tube of white. So these three spots here are your white. There isn't white, even the cat is sort of an off-white, all right? That's really important to notice. And so your eye is always going to go to the lightest light and the darkest dark. So this is where you're going to get in this picture. Now moving on from that picture, moving these on. I'll just move that on. Any questions about that before I keep going?
Not so far.
All right, so you guys, all right, so moving on. I liked this one. This is a young man on a balcony. He's blowing bubbles. I don't know what the obsession is bubbles with this man, but doesn't this guy look like someone who might like bubbles?
He looks like a bubble guy to me.
He looks like a bubble guy to me. You know what I mean? For sure. And here's this funny little guy looking up at him, and this is sort of princely young man with his locks and his bows. Well, apparently bows were the things because he's got his hair tied back in a black bow. Well, remember.
Again, you didn't have rubber bands. You didn't have crunchies.
No, so it's I think
we're
the word is
1700
foppish.
people.
You know, have you ever heard that expression, foppish, and sort of, dressed to the max and sort of, lots of lace? Well, that's everybody kind of dressed like that then. And he's got this little thing of soap here that he's in a straw where he can get his little soapy water, and he starts to then blow his bubble. And I want you to again notice. Let's take a look at the black and white drawing of this. All right. Here's our black and white picture. And again, what do we notice? Light coming from here. 3 maybe 4 main places where it's light.
But they'll all make a triangle again.
But they make this triangle. Exactly. They make a triangle. Here is a close-up of this that I was able to print out. Now you can really see it, can't you? Because that other one was kind of faded. Here's this kind of dirty bubbles. So you've got a little bit of white here, a little bit of white here, and then the light on his face, the light on the back of his hands. Look how beautiful these hands are painted. And you've got a little tiny spark on the bubble, okay? And then way back here, this guy you barely see. And you see this little tiny edge. He was very big on this edge of this brick here like this, that's sort of stone, and see the little chip? He liked to do that too, the little chip thing here. So, I mean, if you're saying what can you learn about some, about artwork like this, what you can learn in your own art is, have you limited the areas of light that you're putting? Have you thought about limiting the areas of really light areas to a few places? Are you cognizant, aware of your picture pattern? Now, not all picture patterns are triangles, but this is certainly a really good example of that. And again, I can show you here in this more contrasted drawing, this little bit of light here. See, the milk's lighter here, the soap bubble's lighter here. And again, his hand, if you talked about this in black and white. So one of the things that'll help you when you're starting to look at something that to paint, probably maybe you found it on Pinterest or you found one of our lessons, print it out and take a and print it out in black and white and really study where the light sources are. And then as you're painting, I can't say this enough, as you're painting, then I want you to keep, kind of keep going with that. All right, so let's move this out of the way and start with the next one. Now this was interesting to me because when I compare the background to here, do you see this color here in his shirt is almost identical to the background he did for her. This is sort of kind of one of his favorite things here, which I really like. It's sort of this green multicolored background, and it's all very soft. We've got a video on YouTube on how to do backgrounds for a still life, and I show you guys just using browns and warm colors how to do a background like this, except that you just change it into your greens. He probably started out, to get this background, he probably started off with, say, if I were going to paint this background, I'd start out probably with burnt sienna, maybe with a little yellow oxide in it. I'd dry that, and then I'd start applying these other colors over it, using this sort of circular motion to get this background color. And if we have time today, depending on how this goes, I might even show you how we might make a background like this. I'll keep this picture out. We'll get a little paint out. I'll show you how you might do that. Okay.
We got a question from Rhonda.
Yeah.
What are some other picture patterns besides the triangle?
Well, there's dozens, but the triangle is one of the easiest ones to use. Again, you see another one here too, another triangle. S is another really good one. For landscapes, an S is a great one.
That leads
Or
you
a
right
Z
through
or an S are good picture patterns. Okay? And so those are really good ones. But there's whole books on how to do picture patterns. But generally speaking, when you're talking about portraits, generally you kind of center the person. And sometimes if it's a portrait of a vase even, you center the vase, all right? So even if it's a still life of, say, flowers, the vase is kind of like the portrait. Okay. All right? Now, I want you to notice something. She's playing badminton. Look, this is the shuttlecock. Here's the badminton thing. This is 1700. This little girl's playing badminton.
In a dress.
In a dress.
Let's see us do that nowadays,
Yeah,
huh?
and again, we've got the little blue bell here, and she's got some keys or something tied here, down here. And I don't know what this little red pouch is, but notice that this red goes with here. Now, the darkest dark in this picture, now this is very fun, the darkest dark in this picture, I want you to see this, because let's look at this. Is this what? Right here, there's
feather.
this black, it's black, there's little black thing on the shuttle thing, and then right around her bodice, okay? Those are the two darkest darks in this whole painting. Everything else is quite light. This is a very light, contrasting painting. The red, and you'll see that, for instance, there's this. This is almost blue though. It's kind of a dark blue. This is for sure black. Nothing else is this dark. But again, the way this racket's holding, it's very clever how this was laid out. Very, very clever. And you see this dress here is very light. Everything very light here. So that in order for the contrast to happen, the black is not against a white feather, it's against a yellow feather. So that we're going to see more of a contrast. Well, still, it's probably right about here is this dark shadow. So it's going to bring us up to here. And there's nothing real dark around her face. There's a little bit of dark right there. So those are things, you know, to be aware of as far as what's, we'll just put that in the way in case we want to do it. Any other questions before we get going?
Yeah, Tanya's asking, isn't there times when the main subject can be off-center?
Generally speaking, for portraits, it's pretty much, if you go, you can go through hundreds of, there's exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, a portrait, just like if you were doing a photograph for somebody, you look at, well, just go through photographers' shots of people for, you know, for pictures, for, you know, sometimes you have to have a picture of yourself or your website or, you know, resume or something. It's a straight-on shot. Okay, your person, their head may be turned, they may be looking off to the side, or may not be staring straight at you. For instance, in his portrait, he's not looking right at us, all right, but it's still the whole picture. Where in this painting right here, again, well, he really loved these triangular picture patterns, didn't he? Because we've got this lady, and she's here's the middle, so it is off-center her, because it's not just about her, it's about what do we got down here? We've got a little kettle down here. We've got this table, beautiful little tablecloth, bread, egg, wine glass, a pitcher. She's got a long pot here, which is interesting, and she's holding something in her hand. Looks like she's holding a hard-boiled egg, and she's got a spoon, and she's going to wrap on it.
It looks like it. Look what's on the plate. It's an egg holder with another
It's an egg holder. You're right. It's an egg holder. Did you guys ever have one of those egg holders? You ever done that, where you put the egg in the holder after it's hard-boiled and you crack around it and cut off the top? My parents did that. My parents were big on this fancy stuff. We had egg holders all over the house. Did you have egg holders all?
No egg holders.
No hard. Oh my gosh.
We opened our eggs and ate them. There's no sense in holding them for what?
No.
Hold them for ransom?
No, because when you hard-boiled an egg, John, you don't always have it hard-boiled. So some people like soft-boiled eggs. So it goes in the little egg cup.
Oh, sorry.
It goes in the egg cup, and then it sits on there, and then you very carefully take the back of a knife and the. Okay, so listen.
Here we go. 3D.
In case you didn't know this, this is important stuff, right? So you've got your little egg right
this
here
is going
like
to be our
that.
new paint. We are going to do a painting
And you
of this.
do you crack it like this up here at the top with your knife, right? And then you kind of cut that part off.
You pop
and
the top off.
then your egg's kind of running down like this because it's all soft, and it's sitting in this nifty little egg holder like that. You know, sitting in there like that.
Well,
okay.
Everybody should have an egg holder.
Yeah, for
I'm
hard-boiled
going to put
eggs.
that on my Christmas list.
I'm telling you, an egg holder. Guys, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Didn't you guys use egg holders? I don't know, maybe you didn't. All right, so now I like that one. Let me show you the black and white drawing of this, because again, you'd think, look at what's white and what's actually kind of off-white, okay? Now again, we have the black and white photo, and you've got the really white thing here with the tablecloth, boom, boom, right? The rest of this is in shadow. Light's obviously coming from this direction, yes? It's going to get these spaces right here, this half of the picture, and a little bit on the top of her head, and this little bit right there, and this part of the sleeve, all right? Now, that's where he wanted the light. So, because again, this causes a picture pattern, and it's a triangle, and you're following out. Everything else is just sort of detailed. He didn't make this pot real light. If you look at it here, you can barely see it. It's there. There's enough contrast in the pot to see it, and you can see the egg, which is, you know, still light. You can see her hand. It's a beautifully painted picture too. I mean, you look at the detail on that, and she's got this very pretty, you know, kind of interesting striped dress, plain little apron. It's very nice. It gives you an idea of how they lived. A little bonnet tied in the back. Okay, so I think that's kind of a cool picture. I mean, I think that's kind of a cool picture. Now this one, the printout of this isn't as good as this. Is a little bit faded. When
Your painting looks a lot better than that.
Yeah, well, this one got, this print, I've actually got a better print out of this. Where'd this one go? Here's the painting that we did of it, because in the actual, when I looked at the photo on, on my computer, it wasn't this green. It was more like this. This particular, I think my printer's running out of ink. But look, notice the crack here. And I had pots that looked like this, when I was a kid, we had stuff that looked like that. And a pot that could have looked like this. And in this picture, I didn't put this other little thing in, whatever, the pepper grinder, I don't know what that is. I didn't put it in, right? And then there's this little kind of odd little onion piece here. I don't like onions.
That's called green onion.
Well, it's just one onion. I don't know. I didn't get it. It's one onion. But
and as an artist, you want to remember you can do these things.
Yeah, we did a little editing here, right? There's a little bit of green around here. Then here, and even these eggs have color. And notice the shadow under the eggs, the shadow here. Again, you've got, the light source is not as dramatic on this one.
It's more front lit.
It's more front lit as this one. So the main lights, this is basically your center of interest right here, is your lightest light and your darkest dark are these eggs, and this little tiny bit of light right here. There was a little bit of light on whatever this thing was. Boy, look at how the printer just shrunk that down. That's weird. I don't understand that, John, but that's okay. But for the purpose of understanding light areas, this is what you want to do, understanding your light areas. I think this is a good one. And again, if you're interested in doing this, this is part of our regular lessons library on gingercooklive.gallery. We try to do, our members get one new lesson every week, and we start off with very beginning lessons and intermediate and harder. So, but during a month's time, we'll have a little bit of everything for every level. So I'll move this away, and
yours definitely looks better than his.
Thank you. And then I'm going to just show you this one right here. This is these pears. Now, what was interesting to me about the pears? Okay, it's very interesting about the pears. Let's move this out of the way here. You've got, could you say this was a triangular picture pattern again? Not as obvious, okay? Because what happens is, and we're going to talk a little about what you can kind of learn from this and why we care, all right? I'm going to show you why we cared. How's that? Why we care is if you've got a picture like this, your eyes going into the canvas like this, all right? If you're taking photographs, this really makes a difference. So in real life, and people always are just so fascinated about what really it was there, must be true. We have historians for that. That's not your job. As artists, your job is to bring us into some sort of fantasy world. So if you've got a tree that's coming up like, I saw this the other day. Somebody had done one of my trees, and they said I did my own version. I'm going, okay. And then they did this. They had some trees, and then they had a tree that did this. Right in the middle. All right, that was their tree. Well, basically, what this did was take your eye right out of the canvas. You would never put anything right there to block off the view. Now, where this tree would need to be, right, just as an example, was you could have a tree here, because your eye's going in here, and it's going to stop. This tree here could stop, and this tree here, you could have one leaning a little bit this way, again, to bring your eye back. You've got some trees here. Let's see, let's change colors of chalk. Let's do some pink or something so you can see it. You can have a tree here the branches are going this way, and you can have some trees like this, but basically you do not want a branch like, say, that did this, because again, this line takes your eye will follow the line. So it's not just a matter of just willy-nilly just throwing up branches and things, okay? And somebody asked me about another picture pattern besides a triangle. The triangles are really easy; they're just no-brainers, okay? But another type of picture pattern is an S like this. So you might have a road coming up like this, okay? And then the road's going to curve and bring your eye back. and then you might have a tree here, something here that would act as a stop, so this didn't take your eye off. And you've got something here that what you're trying to do is contain the viewer inside your picture. Okay, that's the whole idea behind picture patterns. And again, an S or a Z or the triangle is probably the easiest. Now the other thing is I've got is we've got here's a black and white photo, and then let's get a paint tube out so you can see some white. This is white, okay? Look at there's only like 3 or 4 places where there's white. I think Daniel, if you didn't see Daniel Elliott was here at the very first Monday of September, and he did a really interesting palette knife painting, but he talked a lot about white and values, and we're talking about this. Now, if you don't own a grayscale, this is the time. I don't sell them. Go out and buy one, right? Go get a grayscale. This isn't an ad to go buy stuff, but you want a grayscale, okay? And so basically what Daniel was saying, which I thought was extremely interesting, was what he said was that most of your paint colors, like all your little tubes of paint, okay, are going to fall right about here in the grayscale on this side and this side. So everything's going to look pretty monochromatic unless you have some lights and darks. Okay? So we're not just talking about the lights here, we're talking about the darks too. The darkest dark on here is right here next to this light pair. You see that? It's in this area right here. Okay? And you've
right next to the lightest light.
Yeah, see? Because that's your, that's going to be, that's the center of interest. This glass is here to sort of balance the picture, okay? And and then you notice he's got look at the shape of his pear. He didn't clone. He's got one like this, he's got one like this, right? And then he's got this one like that, okay? So what happens is that your eye's going here. Now just follow me around like this. And then this is coming up here and doing that. So that's keeping your eye in the center. So this is like a portrait of fruit, kind of, And then look at the direction that this one's going, kind of in this direction. See the arrow like that. So your eye's doing toot 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 all the way around like that. Okay. There's some real thought behind that. Okay. And then what colors did he use? Well, I like the fact that he put some sort of red liquid in the glass. Now you notice the glass has got a dark outline, but a lot of times in the inside here is darker, the top part is lighter, and then the only bit of white on the glass is tiny bit of highlight right there, a little bit here. Here's a little piece of garlic, again, a little bit of white. This is just taking you all the way around here. And one thing I've always said is to darken your corners. You've heard me say that. Darken your corners. Because what happens is when you darken the corners down here and here, this forces your eye in. And oh, I missed this important thing. Sorry. I missed it on here and I'm going to put it here. See this knife that's under here? Like this is a knife. That's bringing your eye in here too. It's not taking your eye out. That's actually, this knife is tucked under here. And that's also bringing your eye in here. So again, we're almost at a triangular picture pattern. How cool is that, right?
A question came up from Mary, which you kind of answered. When painting the light source, will the dark side be painted monochromatic? Really depends on what's back in there.
Well, look, here's this dark brown on the pear, and then there's light next to it. Do you see that?
A dark and light.
Yeah, there's the light, dark and light. And here's the, wherever, what you've got to remember is you've got a reference photo. Use it. Just notice where your lights are, because the photo will tell you. You don't have to make it up. This isn't something you have to make up. No, it's like, have you ever had an open book test? Don't you love those where you get to look up the answer?
I find those to be very hard.
Did you?
Yeah, because they're tricky questions.
Okay. Well,
and they assume
just imagine this is like an open book test. When you have a reference photo, they've told you where all the lights and darks are. Like you didn't have to hunt it out. They've told you. Now your job is to just find them. Okay? And then look in your painting and make sure you got the same ones. That's all. It's really simple. So once you get down to it, people say, well, why? I want to do some original stuff. Most of people are never ready to do original stuff for a long time until they understand picture patterns and light sources and stuff. and how to take a good photo. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but what you can do is you can learn technique. You can learn how to make a blended background like this, how to mix colors, why somebody did something like this. There's a lot to, we can learn so much from the masters. If you have a museum where you live, I highly suggest, taking a day. Usually most museums have a free day at some point. I think Thursdays in Houston are free. Take a trip to the museum and stare at the paintings. See, kind of follow along what we've done here. See if this doesn't make sense to you, okay? Because every painting, I promise you, it's going to tell you something. But the time it makes it to a museum, it's pretty good. And try to understand why it was there. Maybe they did it because of the color. Sometimes, like in the case of a Van Gogh or Renoir or something like that, at the point their signature's on it, it's valuable, and maybe that's the only one they could find and the only one they could get. So not every painting they did is, great, but they did an awful lot of great ones. And keep in mind, Vincent van Gogh never sold a painting, and he sold one painting in his life, traded for a few. Very discouraged, as far as people wanting his art. And now his paintings are the most expensive anybody could buy today, but it took a while for the world to catch up to his vision, So, all right, so I'm going to put this one away. I hope that, someday I may do this one. I think it's a nice companion piece, though. I prefer when he did the sort of the bricks, the kind of the stone under here. I think it's nice, but I like this one, even though I think that's a fig.
It looks like it looks like a fig or a walnut. But being white like that,
in the center and kind of dark around it. This is garlic. That's not a garlic.
Why would you have garlic with pears?
Well, what's that? See, this is what I always get down. Like, what is that? I don't know.
Couldn't that be the meat of the fig?
Yeah. Well, where's the rest of it? Maybe he ate it.
He ate it.
There's a half of it there, and there's a knife there. So I don't know.
Now, hold back out there. Somebody made a comment that they felt that the knife would be taking the eye out because it's pointing out of the picture. But you got to realize the knife is very dark.
Yeah.
So it's very subtle.
Yeah.
And then you see where you have a little bit of brightness pulling you back in, right where her finger is, with that little triangle.
Right there.
Yeah, it's going to pull you right back in.
And there's a shadow underneath it here, too. It's
Yeah.
kind of subtle. See the shadow underneath the knife, so the knife's taking you that way. But it is something to be aware of, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had it.
So I would not put a silver knife there.
I had an art teacher tell me one time, and I've seen exceptions to the rule for this. We're going to come back to our picture. I had an art teacher tell me one time, it's interesting, and I had to really question it because, here's your painting again, right? And you've got a road, here's a road like that, right? And you've got some stuff. And she said, you never put a rock right here or something right here, because your eye goes in and it stops you from going in. And I've seen exceptions to that, but for the most part, that's another one where you kind of don't want
You don't
stuff.
block the view.
You don't block the entrance. Because we read in the Western civilization, we read from left to right. But
You
now,
had to think about that, didn't you?
yeah, but now because I'm a little dyslexic, but you do read that way. But now this is an interesting thing. A lot of times we'll see paintings that are coming over, particularly from China, and they read from this way. And sometimes you'll see a lot of these rules reversed, because in their world the eye's coming in from this way. Okay, interesting.
So you got to know your audience, I guess, right?
I guess so. So some of it, and also there are a lot of times paintings are cultural things. Okay.
You might suggest who we are talking about and who is in the lower left corner of our picture.
This is Chardin. This is if you just joined us. This is Jean.
And that is not a lady.
Jean-Baptiste Chardin. He lived 100 years before.
The gang.
He lived 100 years before Van Gogh and those guys. He was born in
1699.
1690, died in 1757. What was it? Yeah. So I mean, what was it? 1776. Wasn't that important?
1779. 80 years. He lived 80 years.
Yeah, 80 years, but 1776. Didn't we have a war with England with George Washington
we did.
in 1776? You got to appreciate the time period, how long ago this was.
And he was doing great art.
He was doing great art, and one of the things they said about him, right, was that he was admitted to this Royal Academy for paint and sculpture in 1728, and he later he didn't become a star overnight. He worked his way up. It's very interesting if you look at the Wikipedia and what he painted. he was considered a master of still life. He didn't get there. He later became on the board and was one of the most renowned artists of his time. But he didn't just fall out of a turnip truck. And he influenced an awful lot of other artists that came after him. Okay, so that's why we're talking about him today. What is modern artists today? What we can learn about? What can we learn about how to do stuff? So, for instance, like if you were creating a still life, here's another one. Here's one that I really like. This is one for sure that we're going to have over at the Academy soon. I love this one with the garlic, the glass of water. Now, people often say, how do you paint water? Now, notice that this glass is not outlined in white. You guys see that? It is not outlined in white. Where's the rest of this? I'm going to just get this. It looks like it is, kind of, doesn't it? His background, his table sort of fades off into nothing. Again, we've got the darkened corner here. You've got where are we seeing our picture pattern? Going up like this. I'm going to just find the black and white photo of that real quick so I can mark all over it. All right, the light, remember your eye goes to the lightest light and the darkest dark first, and where is that? That's right here. See that? Right here, with this garlic. And even on the glass, you can see where there's a little bit of white here and right in here, tiny little bits on the rim, but this is sort of an off-white. You see that? And then we're suggesting something's in the glass. He's got little tiny bits of almost looks like mixing white, kind of little streaks in here. And then this glass is curved. You see a little bit at the bottom, a little bit of the glass reflecting on the table right here. And shadows are coming this way on the garlic. And please notice the shadows are there. What you can learn from like how you paint shadows is that you see the outside edges of the shadows. This is something that you've got to kind of notice about, that they're diffused. All right, it's just not back to the drawing board here. Okay, I want to talk about that because this is something that a lot of times people don't think about. So you've got a vase here. Okay, here's our vase, and you're going to paint a shadow. So there's your shadow, and that's how most people would do it. But really, you would want these edges lighter and a little bit out of focus as the shadow goes out away from the darkest part of the shadow is right next to wherever the object that's causing the shadow, and then as it goes out further, it fades out.
You want to feather it.
Feather it out, yeah, that's a good one. Diffuse, feather it out, and you can see that's exactly what happened here. And the shadow is never as dark, for instance, as the dark bottom of this. There's a little slightly brown, right here. The garlic again is got shading here. Okay, very nice. And even these little tiny, I don't know if you're in here, even these little tiny bits of stuff that's sticking up on the back of the garlic, I think this is really important. He's got this sort of rounded garlic here, like that, okay? And then these are going, they're that kind of motion, you know what I mean? They're not just this, all right? Just three little brush strokes, but sort of what I would call crooked. Those are the kinds of things that can make a difference. You've got this curve here, this curves. This is a nice oval. Really nice little spout here. In order for us to tell that, he's got it highlighted. Got a little tiny bit of highlight right here, and a little bit here. And he didn't overdo it. And there might be a temptation for some of us to put a much lighter shadow right here, or highlight on this pot right here. And I'm just going to see where's my. There might have been you've got this here. So some of us might have been tempted, right? I mean, and myself even included, might have been tempted to say, okay, that's kind of nice. I'll just do a little bit of light right here. See on this to bring your eye in this way. But he didn't do that. And I think it's interesting to notice why he didn't do it. Okay? And then this painting still works. So think how that's how valuable to me as a black and white photo. And just like in his portrait, which I put where, his little portrait, where's our portrait? Here you go. Just like in his portrait, he's got one side darker and he's got it lighter here on the portrait. You notice he did that here on the wall too, all right? So where the shadow side of this, the darkest part of this pot is and so forth, he's got it lighter here. I think that's really nice. I mean, this is a really pretty painting. Again, we'll probably end up having that as one of our lessons, okay? Any questions, John?
Not so far.
Are you guys liking this kind of thing? I mean, I'm just, everybody's hanging in there with me and kind of liking it. If you like us, please subscribe to our channel. We're going to try and do this at least once a month. Feature an artist, maybe someone you've never heard of, that you should know about, and we're going to go over what you can learn from him. We've already done, who else have we done already? We did somebody, like about 2-3 months ago, and everybody asked us to do it again. I've forgotten who it was now, but it's on YouTube.
There was another guy that we liked.
And,
I like this guy's style of painting.
all right,
It's nice.
now again, I'm going to show you. Now, this is the grapes and the light and grapes, and this is, again, on a peaches. This is a video that we have on our website for our members. But one of the things that I did, and I did this because I noticed this made no sense to me, whatever this was.
It looks
So-
like it would be the top. of some
Yeah,
type.
but the angle he had to paint it in so it would flop down. It didn't read well. Sometimes you've got to be your own editor, and just in my case, I left it out, because I didn't think it added anything to the picture. But what I was really loving was how he did the water in whatever was in this little glass thing, and how he did the glass. Again, it's done differently than this glass. See, let's just take mine out of the way for a minute and show you. It's done. You see, it's still a glass container of something, but it's done differently. This one is we're actually getting some of the color off the grapes, and some of the highlights from the table are in. Well, actually, in both places that's true. In this case, the light brown in this glass is reflecting off the table here. Can you see that? And the same thing here. This gold tone are back up in the water here. So he basically, it's the same idea. And then you've got just a few tiny little highlights here, and we've got that here too. I can show you on this one. See, again, he liked that highlight business, didn't he? Where did that go? Here, look here. Okay, see these little highlights here? See these little highlights here? He has a system, doesn't he? Here's this one here. Here's that one here. I mean, why change it if it's working, okay? So, but it does look like different stuff. Now, these are styles of painting. This is not Impressionism. Last night, when we did Monet, that was Impressionism. And the reason that the world changed for these artists was because Chardin was making his own paint. He was grinding it up, Morton Pastel. He was putting it in a pig's bladder, which kind of looks like a round, like a grapefruit. And he was tying it off at the top. You poked a hole in the bottom, you squeezed it out. And I promise you guys, you weren't going anywhere, okay? You were staying in the studio. But in 1865, in America, the first paint tube was invented for watercolors, and pretty soon they adapted it for oil painters. Once paint got into a tube, and out of dead pigs, right? Just saying,
The pigs were thankful.
Out of dead pigs. Well, then artists were on the move and could travel, and so then they started seeing the world differently, and the paint, didn't dry. Oil paints don't dry for weeks, and so they were doing very tiny little overlapping strokes to get the picture, so that they could still paint it like on location. You're going. So, okay, so got a couple more.
Hey, we'd like to thank Brenda for the donation. And she's asking, will you be at the Art of the Carolinas in November?
I would think that Jerry's would want me at the Art of the Carolinas in November. My friend George Rodriguez, who's the manager at
San Antonio?
San Antonio, has been telling him for years they ought to have me up there. So far, I've not been asked, but I've gone out and done workshops in North Carolina for Jerry's, but they've never asked me to be at the Art of the Carolinas in November. But someday, some year, maybe I'll be there. You never know. But thanks for asking, and thanks very much for the donation. If you're wondering about that, and so in case you're watching this back after this is we're leaving this up, and so you may be watching this next week. And
next month.
The only way you can donate to us is during a live show. Anything from $1 up.
No, you can't say that, because we accept donations on our website as well.
Yeah, of course we do accept donations on our website, and so people have certainly done that. We actually have a button on our website for that, so we appreciate that very much. But if somebody's watching this on YouTube, only allows donations during the live class, you know.
Live session.
And live sessions. And so, but when, again, we appreciate it very much. And thank you very much. And for those of you who have done that in the past, and it can be as little as $1, we appreciate it. Now, one of the things that we can learn from our masters, okay, and incidentally, if you haven't subscribed, please do. So, is I like to see what they're doing, okay? So, remember.
Is that one of his?
That's one of his.
Huh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, that's one of his.
Interesting.
And now, interestingly, one of the things they used to make me do in art school, well, make me do, but one of the assignments was always some old plaster bust or something like this, you know. One of the things you had to learn to do was sketch all those things. They're still doing that today. I don't care if you went to some fancy art school in Italy, and they'd having you do it, okay? And obviously things haven't changed. He was doing that stuff back then. But here's a bust. He might have even that might have even been his sculpture. I don't know, but it was but it's in his painting. Now look at the palette. This oil painting palettes, have they changed much?
Not since 1700s.
1700s, isn't that amazing? And then, except that, and here, these are his brushes coming up here, out of here like that. Except that they had to make their own brushes. Isn't that interesting? Don't you think so?
You mean there was no Jerry's?
No, there was no Jerry's.
Huh.
They made their, and look, here's a little mallet for making the sculpture. Here's a brush here. Do you see it?
That looks
just like one of my brushes, doesn't it?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Sammy
that's a
said that looks
chisel.
like a chisel.
You're right, I lied. Let me put my glasses on. Yeah, you're right. That's the chisel and the hammer. So maybe he did make that. You're right. And here's an old book. Okay. Now, listen, interesting. We've got a stop here going up. We've got the brick going across here with the crack. He's famous for these. Maybe his whole house was falling apart, or he just liked to put cracks in. I don't know, right? And again, this is a warm painting. Wouldn't you say so? He was a warm painting with a cool color of the blue here and a little tiny bit of smudgy blue paint here. See? Look at his colors. Yellow ochre, probably raw sienna, a little bit of, red was a very pricey color. And again, we don't know how much this is faded either. This could have faded. It's like a few hundred years, you guys. Who knows, right? But again, we got a light source coming in from this angle. You see here on the nose, right here. Where's the whitest white? Can you tell? Where's the whitest white?
I'm thinking on his chin.
No.
Really? Well, it's going to be a big blob of white paint.
Right there. That's the lightest thing on the whole canvas. But again, picture pattern here. We're building it up like that, like this. He was really fond of this. Now, someone might ask, wouldn't this mallet kind of take your eye out of the canvas? It kind of does, but then the bottom, it brings you back. This line brings you back here, too. There's like a stick or something right here that this is leaning against. Your eyes, that's bringing you back right there. And the guy's nose is kind of going off at this angle, see? Then back this way. I just think it's interesting that you see his palette. You see these papers. These papers, these parchments, are not as white as this little blob of white paint. So obviously he had it. Yeah? Cool.
It's interesting.
So it is interesting because he did a lot of these paintings that were warm. This was one I found. It's one of the last ones of his I found. And it's a little bit brighter. And again, I'm pretty sure this was one of his. But if it wasn't one of his, they certainly had it as after him. As far as, I think you did a black and white of this, didn't you?
I believe I did. I did black and white the whole set.
Yeah, here was. Oh, you said you didn't have that. See how white that one is now? And
now
the
I can
black and
tell
white.
it.
Can you see it? Yeah, you did the whole set, right? Now that's really interesting, isn't it? That's the whitest thing because your eye's going to go, and here's the darkest dark too. There, your eye's going to go to the lightest light and the darkest dark together, where they're together. This is pretty dark here, but nothing like this. So this is going to bring your eye back to here. There's your center of interest. Cool. All right. Now this one is, while this looks white, the lightest ones are these garlic, the cheese, and you see that this is, I'm wondering if this is even his. And I'll tell you why, because it doesn't, when I look at this, I thought this was one of his. I like this, right? As a still life, I like this. but I think this is a lot more cluttered than what I would see him do.
At least
know
from
that,
any of the
John?
other stuff we've seen of his.
From other stuff we've seen of his, right? Because he generally didn't play so much with that. So I'm not even sure that was his. I found it on a site where he was, but I'm not convinced this was his. But if we were going to analyze it from this painting, which is quite nice, I don't see a signature on it. He usually signed his somewhere.
Yeah, he signs his.
Here's Chardin. I usually see it, and I don't see a signature on it unless it was cut off somewhere. So, but basically, again, you're talking about you've got something doing this. What's causing? Where's our picture pattern? This is almost. Yeah, this doesn't. I'm not sure. I think this looks too new. Do you see what I mean with the potatoes and everything? That looks like it's too new. I don't think it's pretty, and it's a nice still life, but I don't think that's his. Okay, we're gonna scrap that one and pass that. Well, it's good to know. I mean, I don't see a signature. I don't think, because if you review his stuff, he was really into these old, muted tones, muted backgrounds, everything very muted. There's a lot to learn, and his like for instance, his use of colors, where everything was sort of lots of different colors on the walls like that. You see all this. See around the peaches where you've got almost this kind of yellow-green color, kind of dry brushed over the background here to get these peaches to stand out so you really see them. Notice the fuzz on the peaches. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. That stuff's really cool. So I hope you guys, all right, so that's what we learned from, so in review, we're going to be aware of picture patterns, where light falls. We're going to think about layering paint, and just appreciate that the guys that have gone before us can teach us a lot, which I think is kind of cool. Really teach us a lot. John and I will not be having live classes next week, so I wanted to show you. This is one of the paintings that we're going to be doing. You have the other one there of the horses, John, over there?
One moment, please. I have to get up.
Yeah, so this is one that we're going to be doing next week. This is from another old dead artist. It's hard to believe this was done in the late 1800s, 1872, and it's called Fairyland. How cool is that? This was called Fairyland. It actually was a long, skinny painting, and the dress came down a lot further and got light. So that's next week, we did so much of this kind of stuff that next week I thought you guys might really enjoy something bright and cheerful. So next week we also have these rainbow horses.
Kaleidoscope.
They're called a kaleidoscope. Have you ever looked through a kaleidoscope in all the different colors? This is called a kaleidoscope of horses, 9x12. We guys, hope you guys like that. That's going to be next week, so hope you look, for on YouTube. That'll be our YouTube thing for next week. Do we know what we're doing for our members? Oh yeah, for our members next week, we're doing Chardin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah. For our members next week, we're going to do the one cookie lesson.
Not that one cookie.
The two cookie.
That's a two cookie. The one cookie.
That's for next week. This week we have a one cookie lesson for our members, which you haven't given.
It's the green one.
It's the green one. It's called it's Cozumel Orchid. That's for this. That's our one cookie. This is our two cookie lesson for next week on our website. But I want to just mention that.
That's the
and
one. That one's coming before that one.
This one.
This is this week.
Yeah.
This is the week after.
Oh, this is next week. I lied. Then this is coming some other time.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is this week's.
Next week.
This is the week after that, and then this is the Cozumel Orchid coming
this week.
For this week for our members. This is the one cookie. This is a really. I love this one. This shows you how to do the background and stuff. Look at this multicolored background we've got on this, and we do it differently. I'm going to do it. We do it with the paper towel. I'm going to show you how to do that. That's what we've got going. So we hope that that's that, and I hope you guys like this for for our colorful week. Next week is going to be just all about
bringing some color.
Just crazy colors. So if you have, I thought this was good because you can keep the same palette. If you have some leftover paint, you can do it too. And we'll have a traceable for this. We have a really good traceable for this, which will be on our website for next week, which we think is kind of cool. And last night we said that these were out. They will be out. This was our two of our newest ones in our winter boutique series. And this is our Christmas village. All right. So everything, they all go together. Everything's sort of painted around the side, and we've got the bakery, and we've got the hotel, We've got a toy shop, and we've got a gazebo. And you set these all up. You can set them up like this. You can, you put them on the wall. And they all go together. I love how they all absolutely all go together like this. Let's see, this one goes like this, and you've got a bakery. Then this one goes like this. I'll show you. There's a plan for these. But of course, you could put them any way you wanted. We're going like this with the bricks. And then we've got, again, the boutique, which I thought was really fun, with that sort of the little snowman in the vest and our bridal couple. And then we've got bridesmaids. And then we had the candy store, which was somewhere.
Where is the candy store?
Here, I buried it.
Oh.
It's buried it. And sweet. So, and again, we've got, and I started to put this little red bird in. And if you're doing this series, I'm going to suggest you keep putting this bird places. I think that makes a nice continuity. Say our little cardinal. Put him here. I put one here. And that's recent, but I think you could put one here. I think you could have a little cardinal places that would really be cute. So I'm going to suggest that you consider adding the cardinal to, kind of make it continuous thing. So any last questions before we say goodnight? Thank you all for being so patient and watching our show. Any last questions about, does anybody want, what time is it, John? Have we done? About an hour?
You're an hour into it, 8:30.
8:30. So if you want, I promise you at the end, I might show you how you would do a background like this. Does anybody want to see that?
Let's see. Sue's asking, how do you apply for a scholarship with Ginger?
Write us. Tell us why you want one.
Go to the website.
Go to our website.
gingercooklive.gallery.
Yeah.
Use the contact us form.
Yes. We have people donating to our scholarship fund all the time. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate that. We did 4 scholarships last month, maybe 5. And also, remember, what you get is not just a matter of our website. You get personal art coaching, not just with the paintings on our website, okay, but with all the YouTube paintings. And it's a deal, even if you never did one painting on my website and just like what you're doing on YouTube and wanted, well, if it's one of my paintings on YouTube, you get personal art coaching with it. Don't you think that's cool? And once a month you can have some just whatever you found and have personal art coaching on that too, which I think is kind of cool. So, I just give me kind of a gold background. You got something with gold?
That's exactly what's going on. It's got a little brown.
That's fine. All right, so I'd probably start off with a gold background like this, you guys. Probably see, here's this gold kind of brown background. And then I'd make some greens. I'll just kind of show you that real quick because I said I would. And yeah, this is even a better one than that. See, great. So this is this is the background I'd sort of start off with. And so if you want to see how we do that, can I hand you the iPad? Here. Thank you. So it doesn't fall on the floor. Let's just put out a few colors. Now, what's interesting is that I love how he did stuff, and I love the layers of this. When you're talking about wanting to do a pretty background, and then more than one, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And that one painting I showed you with the with this one is I think that was. Are you sure that's when are we doing this one?
You told me that's the number 1. That's a cookie 1 lesson because it's just
Yeah, this is the one cookie.
The brown jug.
Yeah.
It's a brown jug 1 cookie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be changing things on me now.
No, I'm not changing anything. Who's changing?
Somebody wants
right?
to know where we get those canvases. This happens to be Jerry's 6x8 true canvas.
Yeah, right?
100% canvas, but a Paramount somethings.
Okay, we're just going to take a little white paint and a little maybe some raw umber, and I'll kind of show you how you might do something like this. And just put a little paint out like that. These are the little Paramount canvases. And they come 10 to a sheet. They're very inexpensive. And we have a lot of our paintings on our website. In the 1 cookie and lessons, a lot of these, the early ones, were done on this size canvas because paint's expensive. You can learn to do stuff, yes, without having to paint everything. Does that make sense? You want to be able to. You want to be able to not. I want this one. You want to be able to. Ooh, got paint all over my hands. Okay, I think we'll start with those colors. See how we do.
So what's the color? I see you have CAD.
I've got
White.
I've got white and cad yellow medium, right?
What's that blue?
And then this is the little Southern Ocean blue, okay? Which is really a phthalo green and phthalo blue and white. I'm going to put a little white in it, right? And I think I want a little ultramarine blue too. We're going to just play a little bit with these colors, okay? And maybe even some yellow oxide. I don't want this brush though. I don't know why I even took that brush. I need a little stiffer
People want to
brush.
know how I store those canvases. They're just stacked on top of each other. There's about 500 of them. Just
Yeah.
stacked together. They don't stick.
All right, so see I've got this green color here, and here's my gold. Can you kind of see it? I've got a big pile of junk in front of me now, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm
I'm
good.
just going to take my, let's see, a little bit, let's put a little more white paint with that. Okay, like this. I'm going to just take my side of my brush like this and go around like that. Just going around like this. Then let's see, where'd that yellow oxide go? I think we had some somewhere. I wasn't planning really on painting tonight. So, is my yellow oxide out here somewhere? Oh, that looks like it. Okay. So, here we go. That's it. Now, I'll take a little yellow oxide and add to that. Okay, so here we go. Just kind of overlapping that, barely touching it. Like that. Maybe keeping the brush flat now. All right, see that? I just want you to see what I'm talking about here. Okay. Okay, and then if I wanted it a little grayer, if you want to gray something, then you'd want a little cad red medium to gray the red, but I think we're pretty good with this. Acrylics dry darker, so I'll put a little of that color out too. But here's a little bit of yellow and ultramarine blue, and take a little Southern Ocean blue, a little bit of raw umber, because that will gray it for sure. A little bit of white, okay? Then tap off the brush and then just come around like this, see? Because it's not just one green or blue, all right? It's not just one color. It's, gotta just shove all this out of the way. It's, well, I don't know what to tell you. I need this up here where I need some room. I don't want to paint all over the photograph. All right, so there's just a little bit of color up here, maybe a little yellow oxide with this. See, it's not just, again, not just one color. Kind of overlap that like this. Maybe come back with this color, a little bit more blue-green places. And you want to dry in between, but this is basically how you would come up with a color like this. There's a little cad red medium, which will gray that just a touch, like this.
You want to keep doing a variety of colors to make
Yeah,
it
you
interesting.
just keep changing. You see how I'm changing the colors on here? Here's a little yellow oxide with this color. That's a little bit warmer. Kind of on top of that. See, I'm kind of putting that on top of that. Now I'm barely touching it. And you see how I'm constantly layering these colors? And that's a very, very soft, subtle background. Now another color that will gray greens is purple. Purple, Dazzling purple is a great one for graying greens. All right, that's another really good one for that. And there's a lot of different ways to get these colors, but here's a little Dazzling purple, a little bit of white, here's a little bit of yellow, here's a little bit of that color, like that. Now that's a little bit darker. Then I would take the brush and then wipe off most of the paint, and then just barely touch this, come out and add some darker stuff, right, like that. Maybe coming up here like this, kind of keeping it flat now. You see how I'm layering on these colors, and it just keeps changing. Now look.
Wow.
See?
How'd you do that?
You know, and again, it depends on, do you want it grayer? Do you want it, lighter, more gold? What do you need? Where do you need it to be? Barely touch it. Now dry in between and keep layering. But I went over something kind of a gold color to get this background. And that's so much prettier than just a plain background. Just painting something one color. And and he was such a master at this. Where's his little portrait again? Happy portrait. Okay, I've got more paints here. I've got everything piled up here. Like, honestly, you just laugh, don't you? Where'd you go, Mr. Guy? All right. Where is his portrait? Where are you? Where'd you go? Here. Okay. Now. All right. You see this one? See this right here is bluer. You see that? It's got some of these greens in it, but it's bluer. He's got a little bluer. So then, in this case, you'd want phthalo blue if you wanted to make that bluer, I'm just going to say there's so many different ways to do it. Take out a little phthalo blue, have it less green, add a little bit of phthalo blue to that and white. Phthalo blue is a little bit like kryptonite, a little raw umber, more white, see that? Maybe a tiny bit of ultramarine blue with that. There we go, that's a nice color. Right like that, wipe it all off. Then I might start down here, barely touch it, and do this sort of French blue color, all right? Put some more white in it, barely touch it. Maybe a tiny bit of purple would be pretty too. That would gray that just a touch. Here. See that? You see how the same gold background could be used to do something like this too. If you wanted it, and if you wanted to blend these together, you'd have to mix some of this other color and barely touch it, and then layer it over the top. So you can go from a green to a blue. I mean, it's just a matter of just mixing colors like that. You wanted to make it browner, you wanted to come down here like this and say I wanted a little bit more gray and add a little more brown to the color. And now in this case he did something very dark over here in his portrait, and I'll show you that too. A little bit of purple and brown. Now if I wanted to make that, let's say maybe a little bit of cad red medium and ultramarine blue, right? And I would say I want this a little darker here, maybe a little bluer. Okay, I want you to see that you can, how do you get, say, something like this to sort of blend in with the rest of it? Well, barely touch it, wipe most of the paint off, barely touch it, and when you come to the edges in here, just fade them out. Smoke and mirrors, you see what I mean? See how you can kind of fade something out? So if you need a little dark shadow somewhere, if you were painting something and you needed this to be a little dark shadow, okay? So that's how you do a background like this, and I think these are beautiful, don't you? Don't you think that? And I loved his colors. I wouldn't have necessarily, without studying him and looking at his stuff, these are not colors I would have gone for in a background. See, here's something a little lighter.
It seems like his backgrounds complement his foreground, his main subjects.
Oh, they do, yeah, depending on what he's doing. But
yeah.
They're such pretty colors. You see that? See how we're sort of mixing this in here like that? And then if I wanted to, I'm going to say down here I want it golder, and I want this to sort of blend in. Maybe a little bit of cad red medium, and let's take a little orange. I love that, right? I just want to say, look at this. Isn't this just so nice? You can just come down here. Let's imagine this was a still life, and we're just saying that we're not talking about where the back of this goes. See how pretty this is? This is what we call a warm and cool background, like that. See, it's got a little bit more red down here at the bottom, and that's kind of pretty. It's an abstract all by itself, isn't it?
No, I think that's a good background that you're going to be putting a still life on before we're done.
Absolutely could put a still life. Absolutely could put a still life on that.
That's going to have a little vase on it with some flowers.
It certainly could. I mean, it absolutely could. And you could put something. So I got a little red right here. Let's just take it off.
I like that little red.
Did you? I just took it out. All right. So that's how. All right. Just wanted to show you. Let me move this out of the way. This is how you would do. You just put this like this. See? Okay, that's how you'd get these backgrounds. I'll put this one over here like this, up here like this. See? And acrylics dry darker. And then if you wanted this a little, you might matte this. The other thing you could use too is you could use also some mixing white. If you wanted this duller, then more age, you'd use a little more raw umber with it to age it a little bit more. But basically, that's how you do these backgrounds, you guys.
Sherry would like to know, are you just feathering lightly to mix?
Yeah, I'm just using the brush
very softly.
Either the side of the brush or flat and barely touching it. When I first start, I push harder, and then I'm barely touching it. Try this. Take your leftover paint. Get a tablet like we have. Buy a couple of these tablets, and when you're done with the painting, you always have some leftover paint. See if you can't do some of these. You know what I mean? Just take a little time and practice what you know, and you can learn and what you could do it. There's no water on the brush. Now, if you put water, this all goes to heck. You cannot use water. All right, I just got to tell you that. There's no water involved in this. If the brush is damp even, it will not be as effective
It's kind of like a dry brushing technique.
This is a dry brushing technique. Here's a little bit of, and if you want to do more than one color dry in between, here's a little gold. You know, I'm going to come up here like this. It's just over that now. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? A little bit of gold right over that. And I can push if I push a little harder. So anyway, that's the trick. Dry in between. I love all of this, and I love learning, and this is why I'm so happy to share this artist with you, and I hope some of you get a chance to join us over on gingercooklive.gallery. Be sure to catch us next week, and thanks for watching.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening. If you are just coming in, don't forget to go back and watch this again because it was a great lesson. Ginger, thanks for a wonderful time.
Thank you guys. Thanks very much, and we really appreciate you.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yep.
Night, everyone.
Night.